Hey everybody, how's everybody doing today? Welcome to my what is it? A live stream, right? Where we talk about photography, see how everybody's doing in the community. I hope everyone's doing well. I'm doing well, thank you. And today I picked a topic, basically some underrated cameras and cameras that I think could use an update. I think there's the usual suspects, but you know, it's I recently purchased, the LX100 Mark II, which is essentially a 6-year-old camera, as well as the new Deluxe 8. It's kind of the same thing, just some updated, very, very minor updates. But the imaging engine, the sensor, the lens, the processing is pretty much the same for the last 6 years. And then 4 years before that is when the LX100 was introduced with the with that lens. So and body style and everything. So this camera has been going on 10 years basically with relatively minor updates. Uh, excuse me. So it got me thinking, how many cameras are really out there within like this 10-year window that are heavily depreciated and still terrific cameras by really any measure. There's been so much emphasis lately in the last few years on video specifications, um, and most of us, as primarily photographers, these specs just don't mean anything to us, right? If we can record the occasional clip here and there, uh, that's fine for us, right? We don't need, you know, we're not we're not making movies, right? We're just simply capturing moments in our lives. Uh, some memories, and video is not that important. So keep in mind when I talk about these underrated cameras that I'm putting very, very little weight on video specifications. And again, everything I'm going to bring up today is very, very subjective, of course. Underrated cameras to me might be junk to you or, you know, irrelevant. And you may have some cameras that you feel are grossly underrated. And by underrated, I mean within this 10-year window, particularly on the used market, cameras that are just undervalued compared to cameras that are overvalued. I think it's crazy if anybody pays more than the camera costs new. And keep in mind inflation and all of that, I guess, because I paid $800 for my LX100 Mark II, which is probably double what I think it really should be selling for. Uh, but given what it can do for me, I pulled the trigger on it. And I really don't have any regrets other than the price. But the camera itself, I think, is fabulous. And again, it got me thinking there's so many other cameras out there that are probably a better fit for some of you than, say, the LX100 that I bought, that are grossly underrated and undervalued relative to what else is out there. Uh, like the LX, just because this is fresh in my mind because I just bought it. But starting with the LX100 Mark II, uh, if you shop around for a deal, you can get them for about under $900 all day long. You certainly can pay more than that every minute, but on a daily basis, if you keep checking, you can find them for under 900. I got mine for 800. Tax and shipping and everything came out to like 860. But compare that to, say, the Leica Deluxe 7, which is essentially the exact same camera. It's selling for double that, right? Uh, or 50% more. And there's no reason to do that, unless you like the silver model. So I would say that the Deluxe 7 is a bit overpriced for what it is. and the LX100 is a bit overpriced for what it is, but it's certainly well underpriced at a Deluxe 7, and you're getting a better, you're getting the same camera essentially. Uh, some other cameras, we need to think about different categories, I think, because everybody needs, everybody's needs are different. So it wouldn't be fair to say that the LX100 Mark II is perfect for you. It's been so far really great for me. But let's think about, say, in these are the three categories I'm thinking. Is the DSLR, right? The old mirrored cameras, and then the mirrorless cameras, and then compact cameras with fixed lenses, and then maybe a few specialty cameras. And really, I think it's in these specialty cameras that a lot of them could use an update, right? But I want you to leave in the chat section some other cameras or cameras that you think are underrated, undervalued when it comes to buying them. Excuse me. And and because there's so many out there. There's so many out there, and I'm constantly shopping cameras, as you can see from behind me. I can't help myself. But each camera, other than some of the ones that were just kind of given to me, but each camera that I purchased had something I think very unique and was at a kind of undervalued in many ways. So right now, if you can, put in some DSLR cameras in the chat section you think are undervalued, underrated, and we'll take a look at those together. But I'll start off with the Pentax line. Pentax has always been the underdog in the DSLR world, despite making fabulous camera bodies and fabulous lenses. They have a great lens selection, from more vintage style to more modern type glass to get that more clinical sharpness that you might want, or some of the more vintage glass, and they're re-releasing some of those, as a matter of fact. And they're, you can buy, for example, I think the K3 Mark II is an exceptional value. It's selling for around $500, and it's a 24 megapixel APS-C sensor. You throw on, a nice 50 millimeter prime, and you got an amazing camera. It also has the built-in GPS, weather sealing, image stabilization. I mean, there's and tons of other features. I believe it also has the star tracking and stuff like that. But for the most part, I think for $500, another $100 for a lens, you're getting an amazing DSLR in the APS-C. Now, if you want that full frame type camera, there's some great deals there too. The Nikon D750, it's around $500. Uh, it's relatively compact. It's around 800 grams. It's not a huge DSLR, but it's sizable. And but it has a tilt screen, right? Which a lot of the older Nikon DSLRs did not have. I think it may have been one of the first Nikons to have that, if not the first. And that's what attracted me to it when I bought one back in, 2015, I believe, or 2014, I bought it. Uh, but yeah, that the sensor and the color science and the ergonomics of that camera, particularly because it has that tilt screen, I think makes it one of the finest full frame DSLRs on the market that you can get for like $500. And there's a slew of lenses for Nikon. Their 50 millimeter, f1.8s are fabulous. They have a 35 f2.8, I believe, or f2, the 35 f2. And the other thing about the D750 is it still uses the old screw drive mount for autofocusing. in addition to the electronics. So it's compatible with everything. So you can go all the way back and get the old Nikon D lenses, which use the mechanical motor or mechanical gears to do the autofocus, or you can get the latest AFS electronic autofocusing lenses. And again, the D lenses are, I think, if you can get one in good condition, because they're getting quite old now with so you have to watch out for fungus and hazing and all of that. But you can get the old D glass if you can find one in good condition. Dirt cheap, like $60 or $70 for a 50 millimeter f1.8, or like $100 or 150 in that range for a 50 millimeter 1.4. The 85 1.8s are amazing, and there's a lot of people still use the DSLR uh, for their landscape photography, portrait work. But yeah, it's amazing. And in that lineup, it's a much bigger camera. But if you want a little more resolution and some additional options, the Nikon D810, amazing camera. 33 megapixel sensor, screwdrive mount, more ergonomics, uh, fabulous camera. So those are the Nikon and Pentax. Now, if you want to look at some more budget things like $200 or less, and get fabulous images, I think like the old Nikon D300S, 150 or less. I think it was a 10 megapixel sensor. Well, whatever it was, amazing camera. The D300 or the D300S, um, either one are going to give you equivalent image quality. I forget what the S adds. Maybe it adds a compact flash card or SD card or something. So there's very minor update in the S. So you can save $20 or $30 to get the one that's not the S. But the D300 camera, built like a tank. It's very durable. You can find them in extremely good condition. And again, the lens selection is amazing with Nikon. And that's what attracted me to Nikon very early on when I used to shoot the Nikon DSLRs, was the availability of the lenses, the affordability of the lenses, and the amazing image quality that I could get from it. It just was stunning. Another great DSLR that's like $100 or less is like the Canon D40, another APS-C. I believe it was 10 megapixels. Uh, great camera. Canon color science and top plate LCD. It doesn't have the articulating screen at all, but $100. I mean, and it's a great camera. Now, to go even smaller, I think we can talk about, say, the Olympus E420. I think it was the last DSLR uh, Olympus made before going into mirrorless. But those can be had for under $100, and it's a fabulous camera. It takes great pictures. I was gifted one by one of my viewers. It's this one here, which I'm very grateful for. But yeah, it's very small. I mean, the lenses are this is the 2.8 uh 14 to 54. So it's a little bit bigger, heavier lens, but I can throw on a 50 macro on here, the 50 to 200 zoom, and then of course this standard 14 to 54. And I have a really amazing setup here for doing almost any kind of photography. So the only real compromise with small cameras like this is, the viewfinder. It's an optical viewfinder. It's going to be very small, and the handling. Even though it's a small camera, you still need to use two hands, as you should always anyway with a camera. but this has ton of features, full manual control, and terrific image quality, you know, uh, especially given the price. And and the buttons illuminate. And I think Robin Wong did a video on this camera, and I really enjoyed watching. I can't remember it now, but check out Robin Wong's channel for a review on this camera. But it's really, I mean, you can get this with this lens for a couple $100, and you have a camera that'll take amazing images. Um, so I think on the DSLR side, I think those those are those would be my choices. I've owned the D750 and of course the E420. Uh, I wasn't into photography long before mirrorless came out, so I switched pretty quickly after a few years. So, if you go back further, you can look at like a Nikon D90, one of the first cameras to have, I think, video on it. I think that's what the D300S does, is it adds 720p video, which I guess is okay. But yeah, I think those are great. So I'm gonna stop here, look in the chat section, and see what comments you guys have. And how do I can never figure out this chat window. I don't know how Robin does this. He gets to every single one. So Darko's here. Good morning. Good to see you, Darko. And see, you gave an old bridge camera to your granddaughter, and she took it like crazy. Awesome. Yeah, I didn't really talk about bridge cameras, or think thought about bridge cameras lately. There are some great bridge cameras out there, but it's just they've never really been in my radar. And let's see. Thank you so much, Darko. All the kind words there. And Roger, good morning. Good to see you. And Darko has a question. Any old point and shoot pocket cameras worth buying these days? 10 megapixel and up with some measure of yes. I will get into that. That's one of my categories here. Jan Island, good to see you. Jeff Painter. Um, and Roger says Owen needs to come out with an updated penline camera, either Pen F or Compact PL series with an updated pancake zoom. That would grab some smartphone. Could be, could be. We'll talk about that some more too. And Zoltan, always good to see you. I can never read your emojis, but that's cool. Sound and picture good. Thank you. I forgot to ask, but thank goodness everything is nice and clear. I was having trouble the other day when I was doing my shopping stream. And Jan Garcia, always good to see you. It's been a little while. And oh my goodness, Robin Wong. I was just talking about you when you did an E420, and it's so good to see you. Uh, Robin Wong really is been making. He has a ton of videos on older cameras that I think are greatly undervalued. It's a little bit of what inspired me to make this video today, or stream today. Is thinking about some of the cameras he reviewed. Like another one comes to mind is the the Olympus C8080. That's a great little camera, compact camera. It's a little bulky, so I didn't get one. Uh, but yeah, those can be had for well under 200. Last time I checked, anyway. But always good to see you, Robin. And Marcia, good to see you. And let's see. Jan says they need to stop gatekeeping with their cameras. When Olympus was at Best Buy, they made amazing small cameras packed with features and didn't gatekeep the higher end models. You know, I think that's a very valid point with the Canon cameras in particular. The cripple hammer. With the Olympus cameras, I think Robin Wong made a very good point in his last stream about they just took features out people weren't using. like the port on the pen series. Nobody was buying the external. Uh, nobody was buying these accessories. So why spend the money to add this to the camera if they're not selling these things separately in any quantity of consequence? So while they are stripping cameras, I don't think they're doing it to protect their higher lineup cameras. I think they're doing it to save money. Uh, just it didn't make business sense to include features that people weren't using. So that's just one example. But then there's other basic things where the sensor and the processor in that camera is perfectly capable of doing more, and yet they didn't include those features. So, I think like the M10 Mark III, EM10 Mark IV, great examples of that. There were features in there that are, that the EM10 Mark II has that are missing, specifically like doing my sets and saving custom settings. I I don't think they're saving that much money. I think the motivation was to simplify the camera. But I think the cost, the the lack of having that feature is what has kept me from buying the Mark III and the Mark IV. I love those cameras, I really do, but without the custom settings, I would be I'm a little bit more advanced when I'm doing my photography and with respect to I like certain settings to be the same every time I turn the camera on, and I want to be able to call those and then make changes while I'm in the field. But if every time I pick up the camera, it has the settings from the last time I used it, I would be struggling a little bit uh, setting the camera up. So it's not so much that people need custom settings to save them, but it's in terms of my workflow and the way my brain works, I need them so that when I go out into the field, I'm starting from a baseline of settings and I know what I'm going to get exactly. And then I can make adjustments when I'm in the field. I don't want to go out in the field, push the shutter button and say, oh crap, why am I on -2 exposure comp? Or why is the ISO set to 25,000? It's like I I just I wouldn't work well with a camera that just changed every time I turned it on. Um, okay, so Wayne, good to see you. And the K70. Yeah, that's a little bit newer camera, I think. But let me see what they're selling for. Because I know the entire lineup. Oh my God, it's selling for nothing. $340. That does look like a great deal. So there you go, Pentax K70. I don't see any why isn't the laptop showing? Yeah, I don't see anything wrong with this. Map camera, they're pretty reliable. So if we go down here to the specs, 1080p video, micro HDMI port, 24 megapixels, 3-inch screen, articulating. Wow. Standard SD card. Yeah, that's amazing. So there you go. The K70. That looks pretty amazing. Uh yeah, that's a winner, definitely. And Darko says, I miss my D700 and I still feel it great for street and full frame. Yeah. The D700 has got a little bit of a cult following though. Let me see what they're selling for. 300 bucks, 350. They're getting really long in the tooth though. So, it's when you start buying cameras that are more than 10 years old, I don't know when the D700 came out. Let's just see. You gotta start to worry about the electronics. And I get it. There's cameras out there 20 years old that still work just fine. This came out in 2008, so this camera's about 15 years old. And but one of the biggest problems I've had with older cameras is the internal memory cell, the little battery. I mean, even if they use the capacitor, there's two ways to save like the time and date setting in a camera. They do it either with a capacitor, which is what I think OM Systems Olympus does mostly, or you can use an internal battery. But either way, one of those are going to die. And every time you turn the camera on, you're going to have to set the time and date. And it might even lose other settings in the camera that you had set previously. I don't know how much they store using the capacitor battery when you shut the camera off, but I know time and date is a big one. Uh, and I don't bother with time and date anymore. I mean, I set it if I see it's off, but if I pick up a camera now and the time and date is off, I don't worry about it too much if I forget to set it, because I when I import my images, I import them chronologically in my own folder structure, or by camera or by lens, whatever project I'm working on. I have a different way of doing things where the camera shot date is irrelevant, but still it's and you can always go back in the exit date and update it. But yeah, for a lot of people, time and date, you get an old camera, it's most likely the battery or the capacitor is dead. And when the capacitors in the camera start going bad, a lot of things start to go wrong with the camera. Because capacitors, they have some sort of gel in them, and I know the onboard, the SMC capacitors are not made the same way, but they all tend to fail over time, and they have to be replaced. And that's so I caution people buying cameras more than 10 years old, because it's around the 20-year mark that the capacitors and beyond 10 years, the battery, they start to go. By the way, your audio mic gets raspy at times. Not sure why. It might be clipping. I'll move it down a little bit. Okay. Uh, Plus, my voice is always a little hoarse anyway. But thank you. When they released the EM10, it debuted the live composite and had same sensor from bigger brothers. Same with the M5 Mark II that debuted the high-res shot. Yes. And those are two cameras in my mirrorless side. And I bought the Canon 5D Mark II and 24-105 f4 for £500. Wow. Yeah, those are excellent, especially with that lens. The 24-105 f4, if it's the L mount or the L series, which I think the f4 was. Fabulous, fabulous lens. And that's one of the keys to cameras is if they have a great lens for it, then you're going to get great images pretty much. And Jen says from the M10 II to the M10 III and the same EM5 II to the Mark III, they cheapest and dumbed down and therefore killed their brand, leaving Fuji a big chunk. Could be. I I don't know if I would totally agree with that, but they did. I do agree with the point that they did dumb down the cameras a little bit. Specifically, the EM10 II to the EM10 III, the my sets are gone. Uh, and several other features like silent shutter can only be accessed through the advanced menu. I mean, there were some weird things that they didn't give the photographer more control over the camera in the spirit of trying to make it simpler to use. So yeah, I don't like what they did with the 3 and the 4. Although they're still very capable cameras, you can use them in full manual mode, but the workflow and then going to a plastic build, I think ultimately was a mistake. It does make the camera lighter, and I think durability and everything is more or less the same except for the base plate. It's not going to be as strong as a metal base plate. Uh, but that said, I've seen people break the plastic ones and the metal ones because they're just irresponsible and putting a heavy lens on the front of the camera. But I've seen people that the plastic base plate is broken and they didn't abuse it, or it wasn't user error. It was just normal wear and tear of a camera or normal use of the camera. That should not break. So I've only seen that case once, but it's indicative of the design in general, right? And the original Pentax K1, yes, the original Pentax K1. It's interesting. It's got that interesting tilting LCD in the back. And I don't think it's that cheap though. Let me just take a quick look. Yeah, those are selling for $1,000, and I think they were only about 1,800 or 2,000 new. So I think in that realm, when we're talking over $1,000, roughly, I'd go Nikon D810. You're getting almost as many megapixels, and you're getting the same access to great lenses. I'm sure that the K1 has some features. Like I really like the articulating screen was very unique with the little LED lights on the back and stuff. But for half the money, I'd probably get a D810. Even though the D810 is a bigger, heavier camera, so I don't know if the trade-off in size and weight is worth double the price. But like I said, it's very subjective, right? What I think is an undervalued camera is they have too many compromises. Um, TL says I use the AFD glass because of the image quality and much more organic look than yeah. So a lot of the D glass was it's much older, right? You're able to use those even on their film cameras, is where the D mount started. And so a lot of glass is vintage at this point and has that vintage look to it. How that's done exactly, it's through the manufacturing process and design, but let's just call it, you get that vintage look, right? I definitely agree with that. And Paul Sutton, good to see you, buddy. I was a little late myself. Okay. Wayne says the old Canon 1D, 5D, 6D, and 7D. Now the Canon, I used the 7D Mark II from David Crooks, and it really took beautiful images. But the Canon lineup is still selling at a little bit of a premium, and you have to go way back, like D40. The 1D, 5D. Let's look at what a Canon. Let's look at a Canon 60. Canon 60 is a pretty good bargain, actually. Yeah, $400, 450. The Mark II goes up to about 900. Uh, the Canon 60 came out in 2012, so it's not too old. It's just over that 10-year mark. I'm not quite as familiar with the Canon lineup, but every time I looked at them, because I have some Canon glass, and I was thinking I need to get a body for these lenses, or sell the lenses off for next to nothing, or buy a camera for next to nothing, right? To use with them. And then I was like, man, there's not too many Canon cameras that you can buy for next to nothing. Except like I was talking about this D40. going back that far. Um, but yeah, I would say the 5D, and I think Robin Wong did a video on the 5D, right? I think the original 5D. He really likes it, and certainly one of the things Canon has mastered is the ergonomics of the camera. Now, it's made the camera just, in my opinion, unattractive in terms of its, presence. I don't think they're very good looking cameras, but ergonomically, those cameras fit your hand like a glove. And to this day, they still do a great job with their R series lineup in terms of the ergonomics. I think I would say they were second to none as a brand. Now, certainly, there's individual cameras. I think like the OM or the EM1 Mark III. I think is probably the most comfortable camera I've ever held in my hand. Uh, Given the size of my hands and everything else. But as a brand, in general, Canon has nailed, I think, really nailed the ergonomics. The old Nikon J line, those are relatively cheap, and they're 1-inch sensor, the interchangeable lens, a very interesting camera system. It's a shame they didn't continue that, but that's definitely one of the camera systems Nikon should update. Nikon was going to come out with a series of compact cameras. I forget what that series was called, but they scrapped it. But they were going to use like the D500 sensor in there with the D500 autofocusing system, and there was like three different models, I believe, and I was really excited for those to come out. And then, damn, they dropped it. I was like, oh, Nikon, what are you doing? You would have sold those like crazy, I think. Pentax glass ain't cheap? Really? I didn't pay much for mine. Let me see. Let's look at a standard Pentax, a nifty 50, 1.8. Yeah, $70 to $100. And then how about an 85? And I'm just gonna look at the Trinity. The 85 HD. Ooh, wait. Oh, that's the 77. Yeah, 85 f2, $270. It's not bad. Now, yeah, some of this more modern stuff though does look a little pricey. Like this you know, this guy here. Whoops, couple $1,000. Must be weather sealed. It's a 1.485. Yeah, I get it. But there's plenty of great, I guess, quote unquote vintage. But there are some modern lenses that are pretty cheap that I think are really good. I'm gonna have to look at that K70 later. Give me gas, David. Yeah, another thumbs up for the D70. Okay. uh Let me just stop here and let's talk about some of the mirrorless cameras that I think are undervalued for now. The prices are creeping up on these guys. Certainly, I think just about anything Olympus in their OMD series. Their EM5 Mark I, Mark II, EM10 Mark I and Mark II. On the Panasonic side, the GX9, I think, is a great camera. The GX, honestly, I would skip the GX8, even though that's a great camera. I like the design of the rangefinder being a little bit smaller. Like GX7 is great. It has some issues, I think, but yeah, GX7, GX9. GX8 maybe, if you don't mind a little bigger camera. Uh, and then some of the bigger cameras, and this is one definitely I'm gonna own again, maybe by the end of the year. I shop for it every single day, let me tell you. And I missed some really good deals on it because I just couldn't pull the trigger, but I should have. But yeah, and if you guys watch my live stream, you know I talk about these all the time. This one all the time is the Panasonic S1R. That was almost a $4,000 camera when it came out. It's selling for less than half that right now, and it's only I think 4 or 5 years old. And the lenses that you can get for it, you can stack up about another $1,500 in lenses and have an amazing system, unparalleled image quality, in my opinion. The only thing, I mean, there's a couple of major compromises. It is a heavy camera. You get the Panasonic S1R with a 24 to 70 uh, Sigma lens 2.8, which is a little bit lighter than the Panasonic version. You're still looking at almost 4 pounds of camera, if not more. 2 kilos worth of camera, camera and lens. So that's a huge compromise. But if you can live with that, I saw the S1R selling. I see it selling for like $1,000 sometimes. One was a particularly good deal that had an 18,000 shutter count. I should have got it, and the other one had 100,000 shutter count, which that's why the price was down. But typically, you're going to see them around $1,400 and up. But that again, that's still less than half, and it's a 47 megapixel non-Sony sensor, so it's a little bit unique in that sense. Illuminated buttons, top plate LCD, articulating screen. I mean, it does everything. Now, it lacks the video capability of its peers, like the S1H. Uh, but again, I'm putting very little weight on video capability in this video. The S5 and the S5 can be had for well under $1,000. Personally, I just go up to the S1R, but if you want something more compact with access to great, I mean, near Leica level, in my opinion, near Leica level glass in the L mount system, the S5 is a tremendous value. Now, I've owned both of those cameras in the past, the S5 and the S1R, and ultimately, they were both, well, the S5 I bought for video, and I ended up, then COVID hits, and I ended up getting no video jobs. But I didn't really use it for photography because I have my OM system cameras and much smaller cameras that I'd much rather take out. But yeah, when I put the 50 millimeter their f1.8 line is, oh my God, it's amazing, amazing. I bought the 50 millimeter 1.8 for 300 some dollars out the door, like $320, brand new with warranty at the time. And then it came with a 20 to 60 kit lens. Amazing, amazing lens. The image quality I got from that S5 for photography, I mean, is way beyond. So if you want a more modern full frame camera in the 24 megapixel range, I think the original S5 is a tremendous value. As well as and if you don't mind a little bit going up a little bit in size and weight, the S1R. And I'm moving, going back to the Olympus and Panasonic range. The prices are creeping up on these. Let me take a quick look at EM5 Mark II. Yeah, it's creeping up. It's in the mid 400s now, kind of all over. And here's a good one, very good condition, refurbished from Map Camera. You just have to watch out. Sometimes you get the Japanese only version. But if you want to get one in decent condition, you're going to pay in the mid 400s. Uh, that's honestly, that's all I paid for mine brand new. There was some kind of special at Best Buy. They were getting rid of their inventory, and I bought one new in box with a 14 to 150 for like $600 or something. And when I sold the lens off, because I have, I didn't care for that lens actually, but uh, yeah, so I ended up paying only like less than, well, let's just say $400 brand new for my M5 Mark II. And I took it out yesterday and got some amazing images from it. Um, Whoops, wrong screen. Let me see if I can show you one. I'll just go to my Flickr page. Yeah, this one here. I took this picture with the M5 Mark II and the 75 to 300. Amazing detail. Uh, Now, this image was stacked off of 13 images, but even the single image, it was just a little bit less, just a hair softer than this one. But I went with the stacked image to show as much detail as I can. But yeah, this was an amazing. And if you go down here, this is the thing about my Flickr. I'm trying to group things into albums by lens and by camera. So this is going to be this is going to grow. But here's one. What did I do with this? This is the 40 to 150 kit lens with the M5 Mark II. Another tree frog. I seem to take this camera out in the springtime. uh, and this, I think these images are with some generic lens. Oh no, this is the 25 1.7. But you get the idea. Uh, EM5 Mark II, weather sealed, high res shot mode, focus stacking, in camera, focus bracketing, live composite, and small compact all metal build in the mid 400s. Should be less than that by now, but still an excellent camera. And I would love to see an OM5 Mark II, I guess, going back to the roots of the EM5 Mark II, because the EM5 Mark II, you could also tether. You could also add a grip, right? So it was truly a professional level camera, in a very, very compact size. And you could do everything with that, with the tethering, with the external grip that had the microphone and added the headphone jack. And of course, you can shoot portrait mode with all the buttons, arranged. And I think the M5 Mark II, I know the OM5 is kind of an update, the M5 Mark III, but it definitely lost a little bit of its luster when they moved to the M5 Mark III and subsequently the OM5. The OM5 Mark II, if it comes out, I would buy one in a heartbeat if they went back and they brought back the tethering capability, the adding a grip, uh, maybe putting in the new menu systems and being able to use the camera with the USB-C port, just bring the camera up to professional grade capabilities, because you're charging, I mean, retail is like what, 14 or $1,500 for that camera all by itself. You're not charging a small amount for that camera. Uh, so I think an OM5, I guarantee, uh, Olympus or OM systems will get a little bit more street cred, right? Does that translate into money and sales? I don't know, but they'll definitely have more street cred coming out with an updated OM5 Mark II in the spirit of what the EM5 Mark II did. Uh, Same thing with the EM10 series. If they come out with an OM10 from OM Systems brand new, bring back, being able to save customs. Don't strip it down. Make it a fully featured camera and put a metal body back on. And I say this because Fujifilm has not compromised on the build quality, the metal, using metal, right? I don't want to say build quality because they're all really well made, but the use of materials, it's okay. They don't have to be super compact, lightweight cameras. Just compact. They don't have to be lightweight. I mean, what are you going to add? 50 grams because it's metal? And your street cred will go way up. And like I said, I can't say if that translates into sales, but it certainly would give people, a lot of people, less pause when they're looking at that system. Like Fujifilm just released the XT50, $13.99, compact, all metal build, 40 megapixel new sensor. Look at what Fujifilm did with the XT50. I mean, it just, now I would still rather have an OM5 rather than XT50 for many reasons, but uh, I think Fujifilm has not strayed or crippled their cameras in any way on the lower ends. They seem to have really made, the best camera they can at the various, size and price points and stuff. But it's not a bargain. I think 1,400 is still a bit much for that camera. But it's not bad. If it goes on sale for like 1,000, I might get one. Because I got so much Fuji glass, and Fuji takes great pictures. They're all really nice systems. But anyway, so in terms of upgrades, that's definitely a camera that could use a substantial update in the mirrorless world. Now, this is not an underrated camera based on the prices. I'm seeing himself between $900 and $1,400, but the Pen F, uh, I have it hiding back there. The Olympus Pen F definitely needs an update, and there's really, I wouldn't say it's underrated or undervalued. It's certainly a little bit overvalued in my opinion, but if they came out with an update at a $1,400 or $1,500 price point, it's like, take my money. You know, all it needs, I don't need weather sealing, but if they did put weather sealing in it, that would certainly appeal to so many more people in street that like to shoot in inclement weather. A lot of times you don't have a choice, right? You live in areas where it's raining all the time, and you don't want to be limited by the camera not being able to take it. Uh, at least have some weather resistance, so you're not like panicking every time a drop falls onto the camera. But yeah, Pen F2, because that's a camera that they really, I think the build quality, the design, love it or hate it, but the design I think is beautiful. And they crammed so much into that camera in terms of capability. Again, high res shot, focus stacking, focus bracketing, um, live comp, and the image stabilization is very good in that camera, better than anything else that was out at the time. It was like EM1 level, I should say. And but yeah, I go back to the build quality. That design, the build, the way the buttons and dials feel and click. I guess I should just pull it out. Yeah. But I mean, this camera I've had since it came out. I bought this as a present to myself on my 50th birthday. But everything is still very, very solid. All the buttons and dials, the shutter, the on-off switch, nothing is wiggled loose or feels like it's not showing its age in terms of its feel. It looks its age, right? It's mine is, if you've seen close-ups of my Pen F time to time in my Flickr page, you can see it's been beat to hell. And before I forget, someone had asked me in an email about what I did for the thumb grip, because I guess this is a common problem. The thumb grip on the Pen F and the EM5 Mark III, maybe the OM5, is always coming off, especially if you send it in for warranty work. But I just use Sugru, Sugru. It's kind of a clay that you put on and hardens, but it doesn't get hard. It still feels like a thick piece of rubber here, and it sticks. So I used Sugru and just kind of made my own. I don't know if that can be seen up close. I'm using the I'm not using an Olympus lens on today. I'm using the 12 to 32 Panasonic, so it struggles a little bit with autofocus than my native. I usually have my 17 millimeter on there. But anyway, Sugru, look it up. I think it's a reasonable replacement to the. And what I did, I didn't. Not only did I use Sugru, I made it thicker than the original thumb grip, so it sticks out even more. So I have a better grip on the camera. So that's just something I did. You have to be a little bit handy with Play-Doh and clay. Don't just dab it on there. But so take care when you put it on there. You don't want it to block, because the first problem I had was uh, it kind of bled over a little bit here, and now my screen doesn't. Well, that's not why, but I was having problems closing my screen, so I had to kind of trim it a little bit after the fact. Okay, so those are the cameras, and I think on the mirrorless side, Micro Four Thirds is it when it comes to undervalued cameras. Uh, the EM5, EM10, Mark II series, the pinnacle of Olympus cameras, in my opinion. The only thing you have to watch out for on the EM5 Mark II, and they fixed this in the EM10 Mark II. There's two differences, I think. One is you have to be very careful of shutter shock on the EM5 Mark II. I noticed shutter speeds like under 3/20th of a second, in particular, maybe under 1/500th. If you're using mechanical shutter, whether it's the anti-shock or the regular full mechanical, and especially if you're using telephotos like the 40 to 150 kit lens, I was getting shutter shock and the images were not tack sharp. So try to use electronic shutter for the most part on that camera, and only use anti-shock, mechanical, and try to keep your shutter speeds up. Uh, if you're doing flash photography, it's really not an issue because the flash becomes the shutter in many cases. But and if you're using wider angle lens, again, it's not really an issue. But that's the one. The other thing is the buffer for sports action type stuff. It's only like 5 or 6 frames, and the thing starts clunking and slowing down. So the continuous shutter mode is very limited. You get about 1 second before the buffer fills up. The M10 is a little better. I think I get 3 to 5 seconds, which is way more than enough. And the shutter shock issue seems to have been resolved. I've never seen any problems using mechanical shutter on the M10 Mark II. But the M10 Mark II, for all intents and purposes, can do just about everything the EM5 does. If you're not going to buy a grip or record video through a mic jack, it's missing some things. But in terms of photography, it'll do just about everything the EM5 Mark II does, except it doesn't have weather sealing. And that's one of the big features that a lot of people want in their camera. Okay. And Robert T. Donato's in the house. Yeah, the Epson RD, but yeah, I could have got one for like $1,200 a couple years ago. But then I was like, then I had to get the M mount glass, but the Epson RD, for those of you not familiar, that's a really cool camera. Let me see if I can find one just to show you. Epson RD. Yeah, this guy here. Uh, this camera, I think let's just oh, my mouse is on the wrong page. Uh, this camera had a very interesting analog dials on the top, and I don't. That's not a good picture. This might be better. No, that's a video. But this is one of the few M mount cameras that is not a Leica, and yet really had this very, very interesting. Oh, there's one side by side with a Leica. You know, it's a rangefinder, of course, because of the M mount. But these things are so, yeah, look at this gauge. Isn't that cool? I think it was only 6 megapixels, this camera. But yeah, I should have got one when I had the chance. But I don't know. Like I said, I have one M mount glass, and it's a good one, but it's let's see. What's the best 4K camera that shoots video under 1,000? I would go GH5, in my opinion. I'm not as familiar with video cameras, but I know the GH5 is pretty much the workhorse in the Micro Four Thirds industry. Uh, aside from that, the Panasonic S5, if you want full frame, you can get those for under 1,000, and the glass is amazing. But if you need good autofocus, then you'll have to look at something like Sony, I guess. Sony has the best autofocus. I think the A7 III was almost there. The autofocus is great, but I know that 4K video is lacking something. But the A7 IV, oh, but the A7, these are not under 1,000, so forget it. That's the problem with Sony. A lot of their stuff is still pricey. But if you don't care about autofocus, GH5 and S5, both excellent options under $1,000. And of course, the lenses and everything are fabulous for that system, and that's ultimately what matters. Even the GH4 is a great video camera, but it depends how serious you want to get into video. You know, I think if you're very serious, the GH5 and the S5, those two, because the S5 had what do they call it? The V-log. It had the log LUT, or not LUT. Well, I guess it's a LUT. Anyway, it had the log profile built in out of the box. You didn't have to buy it separately. I think the GH5 you had to buy like a log profile separately. And let's see. I'm not quite as familiar with the Sony lineup, but those are the ones that have autofocus. And you probably have to go APS-C if you want under 1,000. But yeah, sorry, can't give you quite as good an answer there. Other than to say GH5 and S5 in terms of just pure 4K image quality, those two are going to be the best for under 1,000, and will destroy, not destroy, but be as good as anything on the market today, in my opinion. But they just lack the phase detect autofocus. Robin says, Robin Wong did a video on using older 4/3 lens on newer phase that the newer bodies had breathed new life into the super cheap older lenses. Interesting. I've never found the need to do that. Because natively you can buy Micro Four Third lenses. There's really no need to adopt or adapt the older lenses. Because you have to buy the adapter, and if you have to, and you really should buy the original OM adapter. I've heard the knockoffs don't work quite as well when it comes to autofocus, but I didn't see Robin Wong's video on that. But Yeah, I could I guess there would be some fascination because there is a 50 to 200 f2.8, I think. Let me see. This is a really good lens. This is the 50 to 200 f2.8 to 3.5. Yeah, this is a really very very good lens, super sharp. It'd be interesting to try this on my OM1, but I don't really want to spend 100 $200 for the adapter to use this. But I might. I might. Okay. And good morning, Clint Johnson. An updated GM1 might do well since Robin Wong and Emily from Micro Four Nerds reintroduced that camera to the mass to become hugely expensive, of course. Yeah, that's why it wasn't in my list of undervalued cameras because they're just selling for way too much for what they are. Uh, Basically, they're taking like Pen PL8 or whatever Panasonic equivalent is, just taking off the articulating screen. Right there, you're saving that much space, right? Right there. And then, so now your camera's this thin, right? And then they're taking out the IBIS, so now your camera's a little bit thinner. Uh, and then they're removing some controls, right? So now your camera's a little bit narrower. So you basically, yeah. I mean, I don't know. The GM1 doesn't really appeal to me. I think that there's another one. It's maybe the GM5 that has the LCD EVF in the corner. That's a little bit appealing because that's basically an LX100. Okay. The D200 is, yeah, the D200 was a great camera. Yeah. Like I said, I've seen cameras still working, but uh, sometimes when the date, let me give you an example. Uh, in the really old Nikon, less like a D3 or D, the really old cameras, when the battery goes out on the clock and calendar, it introduces another problem to using, say, the intervalometer, because those cameras had intervalometers built in, and you could not use the intervalometer because the clock in the camera would reset and just would not update so that the intervalometer in the camera would work. So losing the time and date can be a bigger deal for those of you that like to do time-lapse type photography or long exposure photography, where you're going to be using the intervalometer. If the camera has that feature, not having a working clock in the camera is going to mess that particular feature up. So that's another reason I try to. I'm just saying, don't get a camera so old that a lot of these the clock time and date fail. It can wreak havoc across other features. And what's the maximum shutter count you'd allow for buying a used camera? Personally, I try to look for cameras with less than 20,000 on it. Because that's a lot. Depends on how it was used, right? If it was in a studio, I might even go much higher. If it was just used in a studio doing product photography, art reproduction, things like that, I wouldn't worry about it too much because it's in a very controlled environment. But when you're in the field and you got more than 20,000 shutter counts, that means you're probably changing lenses in the field where dust and dirt can get in at a microscopic level. But over time, this wears the shutter out faster. And I'm just it's just all in here. I cannot give you any evidence of that. But I personally, I would not feel comfortable with more than 20,000. So I like to buy cameras ideally that have as few shutters as possible. Like my my LX100 Mark II had 1,800 shutter count. I think that was a little high. for the price I paid. For that price, I would have liked to had one that had less than 1,000. But I'm being really picky, right? Because that camera is, I think, overpriced to begin with. So if I was going to spend that kind of money, I wanted to get one mint, you know. Anyhow, yeah, that's my opinion. Because I have many cameras with over 20,000 shutter count on them, and they work perfectly fine. But I know how I used it over those 20,000 clicks. So I would be very weary of anybody that else using their, if they shot like I do, I would be very wary of cameras over 20,000. Oh, that's interesting. This lens can be found used for 200 to 300. Good to know. I might sell mine. And Archicans, good to see you. Wow, I don't see you very often, I think. But I know you've been with me a long time. I really appreciate it. Yep, 5D Mark II. Very good camera. Big and heavy though. As most of the Canon DSLRs were, but they were built like a tank, right? Just like the D40. Beautiful, like all metal construction. I mean, there's some polycarbonate, plastic in there, but you won't fault the build quality of a D40, a D30, even going back that old. Was a stack of the frog? Yes, I was hand holding the, best I can. I was on a ledge and hand held it. So when I stacked the images, there was a lot of pixel shifting going on. And I didn't stack it for focusing. I stacked it for detail because I used the same focus point. There was enough depth of field on the frog that I didn't have to focus stack it. But I focus stacked it to improve the details. And there is a slight improvement, but you have to pixel peep to see it. Put the Olympus name back on the front. Yeah, that's not going to happen, unfortunately. Rob just bought the Panasonic GX for $500. The GX9. You got a steal. I mean, I know that's closer to 600 here, but that's a good deal. And the EP5, I bought a used copy and love it. Great build quality and ergonomics. Yeah, the EP5s, the EPLs, they were all metal build cameras. Uh, and they just have they have a premium feel to them when you hold them. I agree. The M5 III, although plastic, it's great backpack carry. Yes. Yeah, like I said, I don't think the plastic build really affected the durability other than maybe the base plate. But overall, the camera, my M5 III has been very durable and it's been dropped. Trust me on that. It's been dropped a few times. Hard. Uh, but it still works like a charm. And yeah, Pen F2, definitely. We talked about that. And Siegfried said, sorry I couldn't stay longer last week. I also have the LX100 too. It's an awesome camera. A new OM1 owner asked me if it's possible to get the same JPEG look in workspace. Why is it possible? I would say you have to quantify that statement a little bit more. I haven't used Workspace in a while, but if I know in Photolab I can create a color profile that'll get it very, very close to Olympus colors. And that's because the Olympus colors are very, very close to reality. And the white balance is very good. White balance control on the Olympus cameras are the best I've ever seen. So assuming you can match the white balance and create a custom DCP profile, and I believe Workspace, you can load that in. If I recall, Workspace does have a DCP profile. Then you can process the RAW and export the JPEG. and get a very, very similar look to the Olympus cameras. It's never been quite exact. Let me just show you very quickly what I've been working on, because I'm overthinking this, right? But that's just how I am. You kind of get a bug up your butt about something, and you want to. Let me see. You go in this folder. All right, so here's the E-M5 Mark II, straight out of camera JPEG. And then let me hide your comment, Siegfried. I'm a little bit off topic here, but it's kind of related. Where's my straight out of camera? Oh, here. All right, so it's impossible to tell in a stream, but here's the straight out of camera JPEG of the E-M5 on the left, and a straight out of camera JPEG of the LX100 on the right, using basically all auto, right? I was an aperture priority on both, but auto ISO, auto white balance, zero exposure compensation, and basically the equivalent focal length. Different apertures though. I'm like 2 stops more here, so I'm getting a little shallower depth of field. But you can see definitely right here in the reds, there's definitely a very, very sharp difference. The reds are much more saturated here. Even if you look at the shirt here, the red here are much more saturated. And yet, they're a little bit muted. There's a slight shift in the tone. Like looking at the red cap here, this is another thing I was looking at, was the exposure or metering that the cameras do. And then let's look at this one real quick. Is this the example? This is where I tried to match the colors, but no, it's not. Those are those are basically the raw images. Yeah, this is the straight out of camera raw image. That's what these are. And then this last one, these two are the edits. This is where I tried to get them to match. And when I tried to match the colors, I got the colors to match for the most part, but then when I do that, the reds get much more muted on the LX100 versus the Olympus. So it's a question of, and ultimately I like the colors that I got from the Olympus. So that's why I was trying to get the LX100 to match. Now there's an argument to be made, and I'm just gonna end with this. There's an argument to be made. Don't mess with the color science of the camera. Use the camera with the color science that was designed into it, and appreciate what the manufacturer is trying to do with the images. And I totally agree with that. It's like, if you want the true experience of the camera from the way the manufacturer intended, don't tweak the colors. Don't mess with DCP profiles and stuff like that. Sure, exposure is a different thing, right? Exposure, adjusting the exposure, maybe the tone curve of your JPEGs, or if you're processing raw yourself, you can certainly play with the exposure, but the color science itself, maybe don't play with it. Enjoy the camera for what it is and what the manufacturer intended. So but I just like to play and say, this image, for this image, I want the colors to be exactly this. I want it to be right. And I've tried using color cards like from X-Rite and Data Color Pro to get true colors and things like that. But even though you get the true color, sometimes the saturation and the way that color is represented throughout the tone curve, right? It's still hard to get things to match exactly. And of course, lenses are different and lighting conditions are different. So that was a mixed natural and artificial lighting. So that could be part of the reason I was having trouble getting colors to match exactly. And again, anyway, so yeah, I'll end it there. I think you can. I think you can use DCP profiles in Workspace, and the best way to do it would be to uh, use a data color chart, set up your profile with the lens and the lighting. It's a lot of work, basically to get things to match, but it can be done. And I'm envious about Fuji, and I say it's even owning an X-T20 and 5 lenses. I would love OM System to follow their route. Yeah, I think Fuji did a lot of things right with their lineup. Their XT100, the plastic cameras that they made. You can see they didn't last very long. Even though they were really interesting cameras, but they had two problems. They went to a plastic body, and they were using CMOS sensors, not their X-trans sensors. And the whole magic of Fuji is the X-trans sensor, right? And when they got rid of both those things, got rid of the metal body and got rid of the trans sensor, now you just have a generic camera. You don't really have a Fuji. And yeah, I get it. They had the color profiles, the film simulations, all in these other cameras. But I think that's why they didn't sell well. Is because I could have bought an XT100 for like next to nothing. Now they're selling for ridiculous prices. For people are idiots if they. Well, I shouldn't say that, but I think your money would be better spent in other systems, other cameras than their plastic XA7s, XA5, XT100. I think they had an X200. Your money is much better spent elsewhere. Am I sure that? Yeah, I'm not positive, but I don't think it is. Yeah, see, it's focused on my hand now. It's just, Panasonic lenses on a contrast detect Olympus camera are slow. On phase detect cameras, the video autofocus is fine, but if you use a Panasonic lens on like an EM10 that has contrast detect autofocus, the autofocus in video is very, very slow. It probably translates into photography as well at some level, but I don't think in a meaningful way. I 100% agree. The G100 is definitely underrated. I can get one now with the 12 to 32 lens for like $400, right? Mint condition. And 20 megapixel sensor from the G9 or GX9 and you know, great video, although it's limited to 15 minutes or whatever the limitations are on the video. But articulating screen, EVF, great EVF. I mean, $400 for camera and lens. Yeah, no IBIS, no PDAF, right? No phase detect. If they do that, that's definitely the G100 Mark II. I don't know if they need to add IBIS. If they can squeeze it in, but I'll take phase detect over IBIS any day because a lot of the Panasonic lenses have OIS right in the lens itself. So you can kind of get by unless you want to do video. Then IBIS with the OIS is a great combination. But for photography, if you have the image stabilization in the lens, that's good enough, and most of them do on the Panasonic side. I would definitely take phase detect though in their next camera, definitely, because it's such a small, compact camera. It's only a little bigger than LX100 Mark II, right? And you put a 15 millimeter f1.7, and you got an extremely capable camera in terms of photography, as it is now, even without the phase detect. But the phase detect in IBIS is more, I think, more highly regarded for video, or if you're doing sports action photography. So for video, I can see IBIS and phase detect being very important in that camera. But for photography, I don't think it just has the speed to do it, or the you might as well get a G9 Mark II at this point for sports action photography. For this camera, it just needs PDAF or phase detect for the video, not so much for the photography side. I know the original EM5 had shutter shock. That's why Olympus introduced 0-second delay option. It was fixed in the Mark II with new shutter. I still got shutter shock on the Mark II though, even with that 0-second anti-shock mode. I was still getting it with the telephoto lenses, like the 40-150 kit lens. I'm sure it's improved over the original EM5 Mark I. Certainly, that's why they brought in the anti-shock mode. But I still get it because I was testing the camera and I was like, why are the images blurry? I couldn't figure it out. So then I started testing the shutter, and that's where I found the problem. Still want the original EM1 is a bargain. I think that should definitely go in the list of mirrorless cameras that are undervalued. Is the original EM1 Mark I. Has everything. Has everything, and it's cheap. Um, let's see what it sells for. Yeah, $300, mid 300s. On eBay, under 300. Silver one for 400. I'm just looking at these guys here. That's a deal. I like the Mark I silver version better than the Mark II silver version because all the buttons and dials are all silver also. On the Mark II silver, they put black buttons and dials. I don't think it looks quite as good. But this is wow, $400, man. An excellent. I don't know how I forgot about that. That's an excellent camera for $400. And Marco's here. Hey Marco, how's it going? I missed your chat somewhere, but yeah. Always good to see you. So I bought a new gray market EM1 Mark II and recently an immaculate used G9 for considerably less combined than the launch price of either one. They are still selling used for about what I paid. Wow. It's always nice to get something like brand new or open box, like hardly used at all, for less than what they're selling new. And Anthony, good to see you. I don't think photographers these days print enough. I'm very guilty of it myself. We all need to start printing more photographs, go on our walls. I agree. Yeah, I haven't printed in about 2 months, and I got this really nice Canon printer recently. I need to print. Maybe I'll print something today. That's what I'll do. I'll do some prints today. Because it was cloudy out this morning, so I don't know if I'll go out shooting. And grab bargains when you see them before they're gone. The Mark III M1 had been out for about 6 months when I bought the Mark II, and the Mark II is still as good or better today. I agree. Mark I, Mark II. I would I would probably skip the Mark II and go to the Mark III. Because in my opinion, the Mark III is substantially better camera. Uh, for the autofocus. The autofocus is much better, particularly the face detect. And the image stabilization is also significantly better by full stop, at least. And it's only a little more. I think, if you can squeeze an extra 100, $200 for the Mark III, get the Mark III. I think it's money well spent. Um, $400 for a silver Mark One, though. I still have it up on my screen over here. I'm like, if somebody buys that before I do, please, somebody buy that so I can save $400 today. Okay, let's go to, let's see, a GFX 50. I cannot speak to medium format. I'm not familiar with those cameras so much. The problem with the medium format, even if you get the camera for free, the lenses are freaking expensive. Oh, you meant the GFXR. Yeah, the little rangefinder one. Yeah, the lenses are just kind of what takes it out of the undervalued cam. Because really, when we talk about undervalued cameras, we're talking about the whole system, right? Not these like one, the LX100 is kind of all in one itself, but uh, yeah, it's hard to get into medium format unless you have the bucks for the lenses. Otherwise, it's your money's wasted, I think. Ooh, a D610 with 9,000. Nice. Nice. And supposedly they fixed the dust spot issue with the 610, kind of. But either way, it's easy enough to clean the sensor if it because you will have to clean the sensor on mirrored cameras, DSLRs, time to time, regardless of brand or model. Yeah, 4K 30p. I really like 4K 30p. Yeah, that's definitely a minimum. I try to shoot 4K 60 in my paid work because I can manage the image stabilization better in post processing. But with the lens mount, so I saw the 4150 f2.8 at a good price. However, I still don't know if it matched my M10. Would the lens mount suffer? No, not really. Because basically the 40 to 150 f2.8 comes with the lens collar. So if you mount the lens on a tripod, you're going to mount it on the lens collar, not the camera. And so never use the tripod mount on the camera if you have that lens on it. Always use the lens collar. So make sure it comes with that. And also handheld, always hold the camera by the lens, you know, which is basically proper, the proper way to hold a camera is by its lens. And then your right hand is used for the shutter button and all the different controls. You really don't need your right hand for much more than that, other than to add that additional stability. But the majority of the weight of your camera and lens should be in your left hand. So the lens mount will never suffer in that case. Yeah, I have bug up my butt. I do. But I got some hydrocortisone for that. Given how much less demanding photos are than video in terms of gear, I don't think it'll make much difference because they're buying sensors from Sony. So they'd have to tell Sony, you know, don't make a sensor without video capability. I don't think that's possible. I think every sensor can do video. I mean, I'm not an electrical engineer, but when you're doing photography, you have to have a certain readout speed. Like if you're doing 10 frames per second, the readout speed has to be faster than 10 frames per second, obviously. And it's usually much more than that, which is one of the benefits of the CMOS sensor. Um, well, let me not talk out my butt, but I don't think it would make any difference in pricing. Can AI give JPEGs more dynamic range? You'd have to have AI process the image in a 16-bit uh, workspace and then recompress it back down to 8-bit. You could not increase the dynamic range of 8-bit file because there just aren't enough bits there. So AI could do it, convert it to a 16-bit workspace, process the colors and the sky and whatever the dynamic range is. But if within that 8-bit, container, the highlights are clipped completely to white, AI is not going to be able to make up data on its own. I mean, it can, right? We got sky replacement, all of those tools, right? But AI would have to extrapolate from the parts that are not clipped. Adobe does this, right? Content aware fill, right? So it looks at the areas around there, uses AI to fill in the rest. But you're speaking specifically of dynamic range. And when I think of dynamic range, I'm thinking, yeah, the highlights are clipped, the shadows are clipped in a JPEG because there's not enough data. They'd have to convert it to a 16-bit space, process and add the dynamic range back in by doing some sort of content-aware fill type algorithm, and then rewrap it back into an 8-bit container. If that makes sense, that would be my guess. Okay, don't quote me on that. I'm not a software engineer either. Certainly not an AI engineer. Stylus 1S, XE2 both deserve an update. I agree. Now people again are using compacts more. At least the XE3 makes sense. Stylus was too much premium. Yeah, so this is a good transition to talk about compact cameras that I think are kind of undervalued. Uh, I think, and this is a little trickier because compact prices have been pushed up quite a bit recently. But the XZ2, like I bought mine for $100, and that was like I thought was a little bit high when I bought it a few years ago. It's this camera here, and I have the optional EVF attached to it. But yeah, this is a large sensor compact, which means it's 1/1.7 inch and a really fast normal zoom lens. This is an I think it's a 1.8. But I think these are selling for about $200 now. Yeah, this is a 1.8 to 3.5. The lens and sensor combination in this camera, it's a CMOS, I think 12 megapixel sensor, articulating screen, very nice, right? Olympus menus, which personally I like. Now that I know how to use them, I really like them. But this camera, and you can get the automatic lens cover. I just didn't spend the money for it. I might do it now. And then you can do an optional EVF. There's also a pop-up flash here, but it has a real hot shoe. I mean, this is a premium compact, all metal build, right? They could update this, but I would say update it to a 4/3 sensor and make an LX100 Mark II competitor or like a Deluxe 8 competitor. Because, yeah, and then the other thing, update the battery to the regular the ones that they use in the EM5s, so it has a little better battery life. Not that it was terrible, but it wasn't great. Yeah, this is an excellent camera that really I think could use an update. Even if they kept it with the 1/1.7 inch sensor, I don't know if it would sell well that way. But TG7s are selling well, right? As far as I can tell. and they have a smaller sensor than this. It's a 1/2.3 inch. So if they could update this, a premium compact, right? It just has to be weather sealed and use this kind of lens, a premium lens, fast lens like this, without a crazy zoom range. They, this I think would sell like hotcakes, something like this. I think that camera deserves an update. So I 100% agree. And the Stylus 1S is a little bit big, but it's a very good camera. It had the same sensor as the Sexy 2, but it had a 20, I think it was a 24 to 300 constant f2.8 lens, which was tack sharp. And menu system, tilt screen, built-in EVF, which was decent, not great. Stylus 1S could use an update also and be a nice competitor to the LX100 Mark II or the Leica Deluxe 8. If they could make it a little smaller, it's a little bit bigger. It's like the size of the EM5 Mark I, a little smaller than the EM5 Mark II and 3, but roughly the size. I have it here actually. David, if I see you this week, David, I'm going to give you this bag because this is where I kept. David let me borrow his LX100 Mark II and Stylus 1S for a couple of months. I really appreciate it. But here's the Stylus 1S, right? And this is a fabulous camera, but it's not small, right? Where's my no, here's my EM5 Mark II. So it's about a centimeter, a little less than that in width. I got the leather cases on these. But it's not substantially smaller. I mean, I have the 25 1.4 on here, but you can see it's only a little smaller. And I just did not gel with this camera too well. It has a standard flip screen. But if they did update this, they would just have to put like, 4K video, phase detect. They'd have to do a lot of things to it. And they could do it. But it'd be an interesting camera. It'd be a nice bridge camera, I think. So it's really more of a very compact bridge camera than it is a compact camera. I would call it closer to a bridge camera. I don't know how much appeal it would have. Bridge cameras just don't seem to be doing that well. Even though it's a great camera, I would certainly put that in the undervalued camera section. Let me just double check what they're selling for. Wow. $400. 500 in mint condition. Man, this is not pretty. Yeah. Oops. So what's the condition? Tested fully working, good condition. I would not put this in the undervalued category too much. It's just a little bit high price. Because remember, we were looking at a D750 oranges, but let's see. But yeah, okay. Couple other great deals, okay? The LX5 and LX7. This is the LX5. The LX7 is pretty much the same thing, but it has a CMOS sensor instead of CCD. They've also upgraded the screen. and they upgraded the lens to be an f1.4. I'm just so tempted to get an LX7. Because I love this LX5 so much. I took so many great pictures with this. Uh, Let me see if I can find it. LX5. So yeah, I have a folder here with all the pictures that I've taken with the LX5. I mean, like this, look at this. This is a captured owl. But look at the detail I got out of this LX5. I mean, it just, and again, the CCD colors, I don't know if people care about that. I don't so much, but you can go through here. I did this really cool pano. That was one of them. I think I have another version of it down here. Like I did this is a 4 or 5 shot pano. And you can see the detail I was able to pull out of this. You know, a lot of it has to do with DxO and stuff, but uh yeah, that's the LX100. Let me see if I have anything. The Stylus 1S, I have some shots here. And remember, these are I don't have too many pictures here. This one here, this is another pano shot. But look at the detail I got from this lens. It's it's just freaking amazing. Um, but go ahead and hit my Flickr page and look at these images. This one, I think this one's not bad. I think I was at the long end, so it's not quite as sharp. Yeah, I was all the way at the 300 millimeter f4. Unfortunately, I only have a couple of images from this camera. I'll have to put some more in. I'll try and do that. I did take more than just these few shots. But the Stylus 1S, you just have to be careful. Don't shoot beyond f4, because I found the fraction set in like you just blink and there's the fraction. So you need to be kind of like at wide open 2.8 or f4 maximum, and you get some amazing images out of that camera. But I just didn't gel with that camera personally too well for whatever reason. I think it was just the size of it. It's basically a bridge camera, and I'm not really a bridge camera person. I don't know why. And Puncho is here, or Puco. Good to see you. When shooting bright sunny conditions at the lowest ISO, is the picture style setting for noise reduction necessary? On the Olympus cameras, basically it's not going to do any noise reduction. Nothing's applied. So it's a little bit dynamic in that sense. At least what I've found is that when I shoot at low ISO, the camera doesn't really apply much noise reduction, if any at all. Particularly if it's a bright image, you won't see any difference. I've tried turning it on and off in good conditions, and the images came out perfectly fine either way. If we're talking about the JPEGs, if we're talking about the RAW, it's irrelevant. The noise reduction only applies to the JPEG files. Yeah, Bayer Sensor and XT100. I'd rather have the XT10 with the X-Trans. Exactly. That's the magic of the Fujifilm system, is their X-Trans sensor, right? Just like the Sigma DP, it's their Fovean sensor that makes it unique. So even though it, on paper, competitively, it sucked, no other camera has a Fovean sensor that will give you those kind of colors, or give you the look that sensor will give. Uh, it's just fascinating. And Craig says, can you look on eBay right now and look at auctions ending on mirrorless cameras and find the best deal on an auction about to end? I would need to know what kind of camera you want to get. Otherwise, everything will show up. I mean, for example, you know, for me, uh, I'm willing to pay $800 for an LX100. A lot of people would not. But I found value in that camera for me. So it's very, very subjective. What is a good deal on a camera, in my opinion? And XMeta says bargains. Pentax K3 with 1100 shutter count in 2020 for $450. EM5 III this spring for $400. Wow, with only 40 shutter. Wow, that's a bargain. Great deal on both. And Robert's here. How you doing, Robert? Hopefully you got my WhatsApp or whatever that thing is. I hate using WhatsApp, by the way. So just send me an email or text me if you have my number. But anyway, uh, good to see you here. Hopefully you submitted those images. That's what I replied in the WhatsApp. Have a great weekend heading out. Always great to be in the stream. Thank you, Darko. Good to see you. And I'm sorry, that was Darko. Marco says, I love the Stylus 1S. Just took it on a photo walk. If OM updated it with a better EVF and modern sensor and processor, I'd buy it in a minute. Wow. You know, I could picture the Stylus 1S with a 1-inch sensor, better EVF. So basically make it like the RX 100 Mark VII, but in the form factor of the Stylus 1S with that lens. That would be amazing. Assuming they could make the lens the same size for a 1-inch sensor, they probably couldn't. I think that would be pretty amazing and very tempting. But then it becomes a bridge camera like the FC1000 series or the FZ series from Panasonic, right? But if they could keep the lens small, maybe reduce the zoom range or something, uh, that would be a pretty amazing little camera. A modern version of the Polaroid SX7 collapsing would be amazing. Yeah. Yeah, I have the SX70. Mine broke though, through no fault of my own. But the gear motor that pushes the film out uses a plastic gear, and that plastic gear broke. And it can be replaced, but you have to strip all the leather off of the camera to take it apart to get to that plastic gear. And I'm like, oh, I don't know if I want to do all that. You know, it's such a beautiful camera once you strip the leather off. And then, if you get somebody to do it for you, it gets costly. Anyway. By the way, I didn't mean for me. If it were you looking right now, what would I? Oh, okay, okay. If it were me looking, let me see what's in my watch list. Let's bear all here. I have a shortcut to my watch list somewhere here. So I'm looking at this is a Canon. What is that? Oh, this looks like a scam. I'm gonna delete this. This guy had like 4 or 5 cameras for $750. I mean, the lens alone is worth $750. And he didn't have good feedback, so delete that. So yeah, I need to get a new X3 trigger. I need this is the auto lens cap for the Pen F. I'm debating this lens. I'd like to get a small 12 to 40, but my kit lens is almost as good, my 14 to 42, but I know this would be better. But $364, man, I don't know. Here's the LX100. This is a buy it now. I would definitely buy this if I didn't already buy one for 800. I paid 800 for mine. And then, yeah, the D300 I was looking at, this R100, I found a better deal. I was looking at the G, this was a good deal. The G100, uh, this is the one I bought. This is the camera. This is my actual LX100 that's sitting behind me here. I just kept this listing up just so I can look at it later. And I was looking at Pentax Q10 a while ago, and I think that's it. Yeah. And these are just ads. Skip the LX3. Near mint Panasonic G7 Mark II. That's a little pricey, but that's near mint. Another Lumix. See, this is without the lens. You got to get the 12 to 32 lens if you're going to get this camera. This doesn't interest me. Problem with this system here, the M system, great cameras, but no lenses. I mean, you can get away with a couple of zooms that they have, but then, I don't know. The original EM5, well, that's interesting. 250. I don't know. I would go Mark II, personally. I think the Mark II is a better camera. Uh, but yeah, those are the things I was looking at. I think I'll skip the D300S and go for maybe go back to a D810, get a big ass camera. But if I'm going to get a D810, I'd rather have an S1R if I'm going to get a big camera. So Stylus 1S have no room inside for a larger sensor or battery. Well, they do it in the RX 100, right? Granted, it would take some major re-engineering, but I think they could do it. It's just the lens would be the problem, right? They'd have to make a whole new lens. Yeah, I get it. It wouldn't be the same. It wouldn't be an XZ2. It'd be like something else totally different, right? So in the spirit of this comment, yeah, there's really no room to put a larger sensor in these cameras. You'd have to do a whole new. You'd have to make a whole new camera basically to do it. So it wouldn't be a Mark II series in the spirit of what Mark II series usually are, which is an improvement over the original, right? What used gear outlet do I use most? Mostly eBay, actually. eBay and my local camera store. I bought more used stuff from my local camera store than anywhere else because I always like to support the district camera, my local store. And then I bought stuff off of eBay. And when I'm shopping, I'm looking between MPB and KEH. I look at those two. But I don't think I've actually bought anything off either site. I may have bought one thing. Used Photo Pro. I think that's where I bought my E500. And I had a good experience with them. So I bought one or two things from Used Photo Pro. I don't think I've ever bought from KEH or MPB, although I shop them a lot for price comparison because they're really MPB is really good at grading condition and showing the actual image of that condition of that camera and giving you shutter count when they can. So it helps me gauge pricing on eBay and my local camera store. But I would say by far and away, I bought most of my used gear at my local camera store. Pentax Q10 has a tiny 1/2.3 sensor. Rather look for a Q7, which has the one. Yes, the Q7 is interesting. Uh, Unfortunately, prices of those are quite high, and the Q system is dead. I know. I think the Q10 just was intriguing because it is really tiny. The Q7 as well, but the Q10 was a lot cheaper, and I can live with the sensor size is not quite as critical to me when I'm looking for kind of unique, fun cameras. I'm looking at the ergonomics, the features, the design of the camera. Like the Pentax K01 is very interesting to me. The Pentax Q is very interesting, and if I can get these for like 100, $150, I'm okay if the sensor's not, because I'm not going for quality, right? Image quality. I'm going for the the kind of uniqueness of the camera. I've never heard of the instant camera guy. Maybe though. I wonder if I have it right here. I think, yeah, yeah, my SX70. It's in mint condition. I got this for like $75 and it was working at the time. It was a gift, but we paid $75 for it. My sister asked me, "What do you want for your birthday?" And I said, "Let's go to the thrift store and find a neat camera." And they had this for like $75. But gosh, it's been a while since I think, yeah, you have to pull it. But there's a little plastic gear behind here that you have to rip off all this leather to get to replace. But I love this camera. There's a company rebuilding these and selling them for like 3 times the price, but uh uh maybe I mean, I'll have to look up that guy and see. Maybe he can fix it and replace the leather. Of course, by then it'll cost almost as much as buying another one. If this camera had some sentimental value, like if it was my dad's or something, I wouldn't hesitate to spend, more than it's worth to fix it, but it was a gift to me from my sister, which we picked out together, so it's not quite it has some sentimental value, but not twice the money type. Let's see what an SX70 sells for now. 200 bucks, 100 bucks, 400. Yeah, they're not selling for much, right? I mean, I'm just looking at these. This is like the one that I have, 175. I mean, I haven't read if they're working or not. That one is unbelievably expensive, but yeah, they're not that expensive, right? So I don't know. Oh, hey, Maddie, how are you? That's a great idea. Somebody was asking earlier about a good 4K camera. Yeah, ZV-10 definitely. But like I said, I'm not quite as familiar with Sony. I think if you're gonna do 4K video though, you would need IBIS if you're gonna do video. So that's why the price goes up. Maybe the A6600. I think the A6600 is under 1,000, does 4K video, great audio focus, EVF, and you can get them for under 1,000. Going back to the question from like an hour ago, but always good to see you, Maddie. And earlier you mentioned your Canon printer. What model is it? It's the Pro 100, I think. Yeah, it's the Pro 100. I think you can see it if I do this. Whoops. If I do this screen, yeah. So it's this one, the Pro 100. It's great, great printer. You guys like this wide view? Um, yeah, it's a great printer. I got a great deal on it. Uh, remember, a friend of mine in the photo club uh, got it free with his camera years ago. Never used the printer and sold it to me for like $175, brand new in the box with the ink. I haven't had to buy ink for it yet. Even shows I don't print enough, actually. Oh, X Meta, you're right. I just saw I don't know where it is on the thing. I'm just reading it from the side here. Sad thing, how Polaroid and Fuji Instax photo material is expensive. Yeah. Uh, I really wish they were. Uh, maybe it is, but I wish their Fuji Instax printers worked more seamlessly with the all of their cameras, not just select ones. But I don't know enough about it. But from what I've heard is certain cameras don't work well with the Instax printers, if at all. That should be something they standardize. And do I ever buy parts not working on eBay? I have. I bought I'll show you one thing that I bought. It was this OM2S. I paid like $75 for this, I think. The OM2S for parts, untested, something like that. And uh, the mirror had locked up and it wouldn't cock and take a picture. So what I did was I removed the bottom plate and, sort of just greased the gears a little bit. I didn't use the proper grease, but it worked. And I had to use some tweezers to kind of move the gear to get it back into the right position. I don't know. Somehow I figured it out and I got this working. And this is not the only example. I've done this with other cameras. Like I bought some old Nikon D40s that have the shutter problem. And I just had to re-grease the plastic gears in the D40. And now they're working fine. So, yeah, I have bought stuff for parts and saved some money. But at this point, I don't do it anymore. It's just not worth the time for me. I did it years ago, like 10 years ago, for fun and because I just found it fascinating that I could buy something super cheap, fix it, and maybe resell it or just use it. But I'm like at a stage now that I'm like, if I can pay a little more and it's functioning, I'm just going to do it. It's just not worth the hassle anymore. But when I was younger, I used to love doing things like that, getting stuff cheap and fixing it and reselling it. I had quite the eBay thing going on, like it's been more than 10 years where I was doing that a lot. I would just buy a box of cameras for like $100 and fix the ones that I could and resell them. And then over time, I got bored of it. I said, I'm tired of fixing these and selling them because I wasn't making a lot of money, especially if you count the amount of time I put in fixing things and trying to figure out how to fix things. Because I'm not a repair person, right? I'm just like a little kid that likes to take things apart and put them back together kind of guy, right? And so it was fun while I did it, but I don't do it anymore. And bought an EPL6 with a 12 to 50. Oh yeah, listed as dead for about $75 a few weeks ago. Just the battery was dead, and the camera metal cover on the back had a dent that blocked the control wheel. Fixed in 20 minutes. Lens is okay. Wow. Yeah. So when I was shopping for broken things specifically, and I knew how to fix it because after I bought a box of cameras and tried to fix them all, I got a feel for certain cameras and what was wrong. And, researching online how to fix things. Because a lot of times, if they tell you what's wrong with the camera, you can Google and see how to fix it, right? And that's what I did with the D40 because people were having a problem with the D40 shutter not turning or the mirror not going up. And if you look, I looked it up at the time and I was like, oh, it's just the gears here. So you take the bottom plate off or something and re-grease it, move it around, and it's fine. Uh, so things like that. Things like XMeta's doing. Got lucky though. Just a dead battery. How lucky is that, man? Somebody says, "Oh, this camera's dead," and it's just the battery. That's funny. And Henry says, "Just want to say you're great." Oh, wow, I appreciate that. I try to be a good person. Uh, I mean, it. Recently I've been doing a lot of shopping and posting a lot of affiliate links, but I just shop all the time and I find a good deal and I want to share it, right? Like I found this uh and if I can share it and make like $2 or $3, why not? But let me see if I can find this. This was this was pretty cool. I posted. If you guys are not watching my community page, you should check this because I try to mix it up with things I'm just messing around with, or sometimes somebody will ask me a question that I can't really answer without giving an example. Like they were asking me about the difference in the macro mode between the TG5 and it was from Wayne. I think Wayne was here earlier. But he asked me, what's the difference between the LX100 macro mode and the TG5? So I said, oh, well, if I just said the TG5 is better, it, it's not the same as actually showing it, right? A picture's worth 1,000 words. So I had the cameras side by side here on my desk ready to go. So I just took a couple of quick snaps. But where's this other thing? This thing is really cool from Anchor. My God, this is like a desktop charging station with this beautiful OLED display on the front, 250 watts. You can go 140 watts on one port. And then it has two USB-A ports on the side. And with the $30 coupon, it's 140 bucks, which is not bad for a 250 watt, especially something made by Anchor. There's also an app that you can use to like monitor your charging devices. But this is the thing that got me like, I want to buy this because it's a really cool clock. So I'm like paying a fortune because I want like a really neat clock that also can be a charging station. Does that make any sense? That I want to buy a clock for $140 that also works as a charging station? Whereas, Anchor looks at it like the other way around. It's a charging station that also has a clock. But I think that's just really cool. Uh, anyway, I'm trying to figure out space here on my desk where I'm going to put it. I'm thinking maybe over here it would look good, but then I'd have to crick my neck to see what time it is. And then I got my Alexa device here that shows me the time and date and all my cameras. So it doesn't really have a place on my desktop as a clock. It's like I gotta have my Alexa thing. Don't do it. Don't do it. Every time I say her name, she's waiting for me to do something and she'll just start blabbing something out. So do I have a 120? I do. Right there. I'll show you that one. I was just thinking hard about this camera yesterday. Like, I don't take this out. There was a video by somebody about cameras they don't take out enough. And I'm thinking that guy has too many cameras. And then all of a sudden it's like pot kettle. I'm the guy with too many cameras that are constantly telling myself, I need to put this back into rotation. But yeah, this is my 500C. It doesn't have the fancy bright screen that the newer ones do, the CMs, but it's good enough. And yeah, and I got some Tri-X 400 loaded in here, ready to go. I think I've already fired off one frame. Let me see. Yeah, I fired off one frame, so I'm on frame number 2. 80 centimeter f2.8. Oh, why is that winding? I got to be careful. So this is the film pack, right? That you load the film in. And then it has this beautiful shutter, makes an amazing sound. But yeah, and then top level viewfinder. I have the I have the viewfinder as well that slides in on top because you can slide this out, right, and put in the view. I have the viewfinder somewhere, which is actually easier to focus with, but then you kind of lose that experience of like doing it like this. Uh, So anyway, yeah, this is my 120. I used to have the Texas Leica. I sold it, but I used to have the Texas Leica, the GF 690 from Fuji, and that was a great camera. But I wanted a Hasselblad because you could only get 6 shots out of the 690. That's it, and it was nice, but I don't know. I kind of regret selling it now. But if you try to buy it now, they're like $1,000. It's crazy. Uh, where do you? Oh, my local camera store does it. But the triacs and stuff, I do it myself. If it's black and white, I can develop it myself. I got a couple rolls I need to develop actually, but I think my chemicals have gone bad, so I need to make a new batch. But yeah, if it's color though, I have to take it in. I did buy a color processing kit, but you have to be conscious of temperature and stuff like that. And I'm not in that big of a hurry to see the color prints, so I just send it in. It's not cheap though to get it developed. But black and white, you can develop yourself pretty cheaply. And then I buy expired film sometimes to save money on the film, and you get an interesting look sometimes. But yeah, okay. Too many choices. So true. So, all right, guys. Any other questions or comments? Those are my thoughts on the various cameras that I think are a little undervalued. I'll have my eBay affiliate link down below if you want to go shop around. If you use my link, I'll get a couple bucks if you buy something. I also have my Amazon.com shopping link for deals that I shop for daily. Again, these are things that I run across as I'm doing my own shopping that I think you guys might be interested in, right? So I do that I shop every day, so I just drop things into this link. So if you look at the links below in the description here for my Amazon and my eBay, and also there's a K&F link, but Amazon and eBay, at least Amazon, I do daily update with really good deals. Like, oh my God, if you guys don't buy this, um, where's, if you guys don't buy this bag, seriously, mine is coming in today. I ordered it a couple days ago. It's going to come in today. $25. And somebody in my photo club bought one and brought it with him yesterday. So I got to actually see it physically. It's a nice bag for $25. And when it comes in, maybe Tuesday or Wednesday, I'll do another shopping live stream, where I'll show you this bag. It's freaking amazing. It's really well made. Uh, so yeah, go to my shop. I think I make like $1.50 or something if you buy one. Some ridiculously low amount. But this bag, I'll have to show you when it comes in. But it's ridiculously good for $25. So get this bag. If you like canvas bags, I'm not a huge fan of canvas bags, but I cannot pass up a deal like this. And I have terrible gas. I have to buy something every day. It's going to be the end of me. But this is a great bag. So of everything I've showed you today, this is the most undervalued, best deal in the camera industry today. Okay. So thanks everybody for coming in today. I'm going to do probably a photo editing live stream on Tuesday. I have some other things going on, so I might have to move that to another day, but I'll put that up as soon as once I figure out my calendar. And thanks for coming in today. It was a great discussion. I really appreciate the feedback and all of your support. If you can buy me a coffee or make a donation, it's all greatly appreciated as always. But either way, you guys are awesome. Thanks for being here today, and I will see you again next week. Oh, hey, Owen is here. Owen bought it. Yeah, Owen's the one that bought it, and I saw his. He's in the photo club with me and David. Um, but yeah, okay, I'm going.